In this episode of The Table of Content, we are talking with John Walker. We are going to talk with him a bit more about his involvement in We Are One Body Audio Theater, find out about some of his other creative pursuits, how he ended up here, and maybe what he is hoping to get into down the road. Stay with us. That's all coming up next, right here on The Table of Content. Thanks so much for being with us here on this episode of The Table of Content. My name is Albert Saenz. This is where we talk about everything cool, hip, new, and awesome happening with We Are One Body Audio Theater. And we are so lucky to have John Walker joining us for this episode. John, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure.
Just as a disclaimer for everyone, we're recording this remotely. We're not doing this in the studio, so we're kind of giving a free pass for any extraneous noises that you may hear, regular office noises, phones that go off, doors that close, clocks that chime. So we'll proceed from that point. John Walker, actually, you are actually a Dr. John Walker, is that correct?
Actually, the highest degree you can get as an actor is an MFA in acting. So
okay.
I'm just a professor.
Just a professor.
Although, when you consider the requirements going into the MFA in acting degree, it's pretty alarming that anyone ever gets one.
Well, I suppose that's up to each person's just willingness to persevere.
Absolutely. I mean, you pretty much have a 1 chance in 5,000, and then you have to go through quite an obstacle course of professional work.
So you drew the line at the MFA, and that was well enough.
Yeah, there's no higher degree you can get in acting, and after I received that, I was already being offered work, and so I had to go to Los Angeles and begin the career.
Sure. So let's talk about that. Yeah, tell me a little bit about your background. I was trying to dig up a little bit about you, but it's a little sparse. So tell me kind of where your acting started and how you got to where you are with audio theater.
Oh gosh. Well, I'll try to do that without getting too much into a saga.
Okay.
I began in regional theater right out of high school, doing Shakespeare mostly. I went through the undergrad years, and then I went to the American Conservatory Theater for my graduate degree, after which I was picked up by Disney Studios and Warner Brothers and brought down to L.A., where I was showcased for different pilots and episodes and TV stuff and film. I started doing TV and film, and then I started doing theater locally. I received an acting award, and that led to some time on General Hospital and some other television stuff like Dr. Quinn and, 10 or 12 other different shows, which then led to New York and an acting gig there that was headed for the Lincoln Center, which led to more work in New York. And being an actor that wasn't recognizable by name, but recognizable by face and by casting directors, I never had to worry about content of any projects. The interesting thing is you usually don't find out what the content of a project is until the very last audition after 5 other auditions, and you get to read the script. And
Sure.
So fortunately, I never had to worry about content. And when I did start to have to worry about content and turn things down, that's when I stopped getting phone calls. So that's when I shifted my work to education and moved out of the big city. I got into We Are One Body, really strangely. Things were very quiet this summer with filming and stuff, and I had just finished filming my Chesterton one-man show that was airing on EWTN, and a friend of mine who knew that I was really kind of very focused on Chesterton, we could say, if not obsessed, let me know there were auditions for a Father Brown episode. And so I was just really excited because Father Brown is what brought me into Chesterton's world in the very beginning.
Okay.
So I auditioned for it and fortunately was able to do it. And then I just got really excited. I used to do radio theater and audio books for Anthony Esselin and some others. And so the idea of doing work on radio again and radio drama really appealed to me. So I guess I threw my hat in the ring for other We Are One Body projects.
Okay, well, that I appreciate. That was a very succinct synopsis. It sounds like it could have been a lot longer, I'm sure.
Yeah, with my love of my own voice, probably. So.
Well, I want to go back to something that you said that I
Sure.
thought was very intriguing. You said by name and face that casting directors just sort of knew how they could cast you, and you didn't have to worry about basically what you were being cast for, or the content of the program. And then you said that there was a point where you kind of had to start turning things down. So without you directly saying it, I was getting that you were having sort of a moral compass as far as what it is that you were, what kind of work you were taking. Is that what I was gathering?
No, that's absolutely right. That I started with Shakespeare, and I wasn't a cradle Catholic. I was still exploring my faith, but I was very dedicated to a Christian world perspective. And so Shakespeare was safe. I mean, Shakespeare was an underground Catholic himself. You go through the plays, you can find so much coded messages that he was probably sending out during the Protestant Revolution. I mean, I know it's the Reformation, but I try to use the correct term. So I was really fond of doing Shakespeare. So that's why I started with him. But when I got into film and television, I was what you call a working actor. I think 2% of the union barely makes a living wage anyway. So I was that guy who would come in and be on a show for about a week as a guest star with a lot of lines and then go off to another show. So I wasn't a name actor. I didn't have the power behind my name to say, well, I'm sorry, I won't do that scene, or I won't be in that. But as you move up the ladder in work, you get more recognizable and bigger parts start coming. And some of those parts entail things that I have a conflict of conscience, I just can't do. And that's not a great thing if you're not a name actor, if you want to continue working. Generally, once you say no, I mean, I guess you got to kind of understand the audition process. So they call you in, you go in, you read the script, you go home. You come in a week later, you read the script in front of someone else, you go home. You come in and you read your scene the third time in front of the casting director and maybe now a producer. Probably if there's food on the table, that's definitely a producer. You go home. 2 weeks later, you come back and you read the same scene for the director, the producer, the casting director. And now the casting director is talking like they've known you all their lives and discovered you. And there's more food on the table. And now there's an intern operating the camera. At the sixth audition, you come in, you might meet some of the other people in the film who are cast. And at that point, your agent, after 6 auditions, about 4 weeks, is making the negotiation for your contract on the phone. And at that time, the courier brings you your script. So now you can look at more than just 3 pages of your character. And then you open it up and say, oh, it's a show for HBO. Okay. Oh, I see. I'm playing an alderman. Oh, that's cool. An alderman who runs a ring of prostitution houses.
Oh, right.
And suddenly you go, well, this takes place in the 30s. It's surrounded about the gangster stuff.
Sure.
And then you call your agent and say, look, I've got a problem. There's a lot of nudity and violence in this script. And they say, well, how do you feel about that? And I say, well, I can't be a part of that. And then comes the hard conversation. Sometimes your agent drops you when you turn that down. But there's been so much negotiating already on your behalf that the casting director, if you turn it down, will certainly say, that's it, we're not bringing him in again. So you kind of end up being blackballed as one casting director talks to another casting director about the difficult time you gave them and why, and suddenly you find yourself without auditions for a long time. So it's a very tricky tightrope.
Sure.
Well, it can be, but it's not really tricky to me. I can't do work that goes against my faith or represents me in a way that is questionable for my faith that other people will see. I had kids at that time who were really young, and I knew someday they might want to watch Dad's commercial or Dad's TV show appearance. They already saw me on Cartoon Network or heard my voice on a regular basis on TV. If they had something that they saw that was immoral or objectionable,
Yeah.
So I just had to say no, and that ended up meaning I had to give up the business for a while and move into education because no one wanted to see me again.
Yeah, that's I get it. It makes sense. You know, it's an unfortunate reality, I think, of the system in Hollywood. We'll say
Sure.
how that works. But I I was just thinking recently about married couples who either one or the other spouse are both either actors or one's an actor or an actress, and I was thinking, how do they go and do a scene that involves them doing something immoral with someone else, and they come home and do they freely just tell their spouse, "Hey, guess what I did today?" or "Hey, get this next movie I'm coming up in." How do you sit comfortably next to them and say, "I did this"? But it's just a movie. That line. It's just a movie. It always kind of rubs me. I'm like, yeah, but it's not just a movie. It's someone had to do something in the movie that is immoral, whether it's fiction or not. So it does seem like how can you just sort of go about your day to day and just sort of roll with it and not have some sort of emotional tie up inside or affect the other people around you that you love? Because they all have parents. A lot of them have kids, and what do you just tell them? Oh, well, you can't watch Daddy's movie. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of these people, movie stars who have a name that's so recognizable, can ask for a body double at certain times. But even then, you're still presenting something in a film,
Sure.
that's just not right. I mean, we're showing a kind of model for relationships between people, forgetting about any kind of violent contact, that just isn't right. And so you're sending a message that that ever since people watched movies from the 1930s and started smoking because Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman smoked, the same thing happens in many different other attributes that film model for society. So, I don't want to be a part of something that's modeling something wrong and detrimental.
Well, I commend you, sir, for just holding your ground. And like you said, I think you were trying to say that it really wasn't a hard decision for you. It just was, well, I can't do it. It wasn't even you're like, well, let me think about it. It just, no, I can't do it. And that takes some strength, I'm sure, and some conviction.
Well, I went to an audition when I was very young in Hollywood, after I'd been working for quite a while. And it was an R-rated movie, but I didn't know really what the thing was about. And when I got in, I was fortunate enough to talk to the casting people about what it was. And I said, right then and there, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And they said, what, are you a prude? And I was on my way out the door saying, no, it's not that I'm a prude. I just know the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah.
And, this is close to being pornography, and that's about as evil gets.
Right. Right.
So being inside the Hollywood factory, not just outside at the shoot waiting for the product to come out, you tend to meet people whose careers and lives were ruined by parts they took, hoping to be a splash on the screen very quickly. And so you are constantly reminded of what those bad choices can lead to emotionally, personally. So yeah, the choice isn't too hard. It was funny, right about that time is when I met my wife in Hollywood, and we went on our first date, which was I had to meet her at Mass, which
That's great.
Yeah, she asked me if we'd meet at Mass at the church down near Crossroads of the World on Sunset Boulevard. And when I said, yeah, sure, I think that kind of took her back, because I was a Hollywood actor. So a lot of these things about conscience and choice were coming to me at that time. So yeah, it wasn't really a hard decision.
Well, very good.
Lost a lot of money, but lost a lot of career, but
yeah, but your soul is still intact.
Absolutely. And I can talk to my kids about integrity. And when my kids got to be 18 or 20 and wanted to talk about dating and theology of the body, I could. Right. Without looking like a hypocrite.
Exactly. Well, let's move up here a little bit. Let's move into the audio theater with We Are One Body. You said that you were getting into Chesterton, and then the Father Brown stories came up. And I'd like to ask, what is it really about Father Brown and his character that you were so interested in that you wanted to take a dive at it?
Yeah, sure. It was just that when we were in Vermont and I was teaching, we had no cable TV. We could barely get the Rabbiters to pick anything up, but we could pick up public television. And one night, while I was looking for something, a Masterpiece Mystery came on with a Father Brown episode, I think from the 80s. And I thought, oh, wow, this could be good. But as I turned it on, I thought, I'll bet you halfway through it, the priest turns out to be the bad guy, or is a doofus, or is not the great character. I'll watch it anyway. And when it ended, and I saw that the priest was the smart one and the hero, I was really intrigued. So I rewinded a little bit and took a look at the name under the title and said, G.K. Chesterton. Who's that guy? And that the avalanche started after that.
Sure.
And that's what intrigued me. The idea that they made a priest the main character in solving mysteries based on his understanding of the human condition through all the confessions he's heard, as the really intuitive, smart hero of the piece. And that blew me away and pulled me in automatically. Then I had to read more.
It's interesting to find. Okay, so it was the original stories were written, a century ago, but Hollywood's adaptation of it, what an interesting way, because really the last time you sort of see priests in any sort of positive light, you've got to go back to like Bing Crosby, and and you see that's a nice, well-meaning priest, and then it sort of starts to take a dive somewhere in the 60s and 70s, and priests are sort of getting, I don't know, what are you getting involved in? And then, of course, further in 80s, 90s, 2000s, suddenly it's really kind of tanking. So Father Brown is sort of this sort of light in the darkness, to be able to capture a priest and make him the main character, make him good, make him holy, make him moral, make him smart, intriguing. That's a real win from where I sit.
Yeah, well, I've always been a mystery an avid fan of mysteries, from Agatha Christie and onward to Sherlock Holmes. So it was just that interest in mysteries already that led me to watching. But once I started reading the books and finding out just how great this character was because he was a priest, then I was blown away.
So, Chesterton has a quote, and he says, "Just one, just one. It's the only one I ever found." So, out of the thousands of quotable lines that Chesterton, I'll correct myself here. Out of the thousands of quotable Chesterton lines, there's one specific where he says, it's really short. He says, "Literature is a luxury, fiction is a necessity." And I feel like you look at the Father Brown sort of mystery series, as well as other stuff that he's written, I'm sure, but you see how fiction actually can help sort of uplift and perpetuate the real world. I mean, you have a priest, and it's not a fantasy story that he wrote here. This is sort of based in reality, but you can take fiction and you can use fiction to support the reality of the world that we live in. And I think that Father Brown is a good sort of example of how fiction can do that.
Oh, sure. I mean, Chesterton would talk, if he were to talk today, he would talk for hours on how fairy tales teach moral virtues and teach the imagination it takes to dive deeper into your faith. Absolutely. I think his appreciation for fiction, from fairy tales all the way up to the mysteries or the plays he wrote, all have to do with how these are the stories from common sense, from a common background in human nature, that help propel us to a deeper understanding of who we are and why we're here.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Now, what about you? Are you a really big fiction fan yourself?
Well, I love George MacDonald. I love C.S. Lewis and Narnia. I love Tolkien. It's kind of a classical fairy tale taste. But then again, I'll pick up P.J. Wodehouse whenever I need a laugh, and be completely obsessed with his wordsmith skills.
My wife loves Wodehouse, and she'll pick up a book and she'll plow through it within a day or two. and she'll call out to me from across the house. I have to read this line to you. I have to read to you something that Bertie says or something that Jeeves says, and it really is such. He was such, like you said, a wordsmith, so good at using words to portray a character in such a very unique fashion.
You know, Evelyn Waugh of Brideshead Revisited fame said he was the greatest English writer that he knew. And that's quite a lot of praise coming from Evelyn Waugh. But it's because of he was able to take jargon and vernacular from all these different walks of life and combine them into a kind of Wodehouse, common language that was absolute wordsmith quality and on the level of Shakespeare as far as creating and inventing words. So I always go to him mostly because I want to laugh out loud when I'm reading. But because I've never walked away from reading one of his books that I haven't walked away happier from. So I suppose when it comes to tastes, my tastes run along the lines of fiction, fairy tale, and then, that kind of humor.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, before we kind of wrap up here, I'm just interested as far as your potential future with We Are One Body Audio Theater. What would you like to sort of continue or maybe take part in?
Well, of course, I just did a Beatrix Potter the other day, which was great, reading one of those. Of course, I'm going to keep dropping hints about Blanding's Castle.
Okay.
Because who wouldn't want to play Lord Emsworth? And I'll always be ready for more Chesterton. We're gonna take the Chesterton one-man play I did at EWTN. It's going to be a new series called Chesterton Station. So, I'll always be looking for more topics on that. But, I listen to the radio station every day anyway. I was listening to it long before I ever did any of the audio theater. So I'll probably just remain a fan, if nothing else. It's just great that such wonderful material is being put out there for people to pick up on and to listen to.
So, John, if Chesterton were to comment on We Are One Body Audio Theater, what do you think he would say?
Do that one again. I think if Chesterton was to comment on audio theater, he would probably have something to say that the world owes a miraculous and well-founded thanks to someone who has created a way to bring the greatest stories and writers, including myself, to a world starving for hunger, starving for literature and imaginative works. I think he would find probably a heck of a lot more words than that as well.
I'm sure he would. John Walker, absolute pleasure to spend some time talking with you. I'm so glad that you found your way into We Are One Body Audio Theater. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to hear any of the productions so far that John Walker's taken part in, I invite you to go to our YouTube page for We Are One Body Audio Theater and look up some of the Father Brown mysteries that they've done so far. You can also check us out at our Facebook page for We Are One Body Audio Theater, or as always, fall back to our website, waobAudiotheater.org, and we are looking forward to more participation from the great John Walker. John Walker, thanks so much for taking some time to be with us.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for taking some time here on the Table of Content. We look forward to having you tune in for the next episode. Take care.